Welcome to Aging in Place Strategies and Answers with Linda Prio. Will it be possible to remain in my home as I age? Do I feel safe in my home? How do I figure out how much support I will need when my health needs start to change? What if I decide to move into a community instead? Which community will meet my needs now and in the future? Who will play a role in helping me with decision making? Do you ask yourself these same questions? Aging in Place Strategies and Answers can help you gain practical knowledge that will help you create your own Aging in Place roadmap. If you are already a care partner, a power of attorney, or in crisis mode with your Aging in Place strategy, you will learn what you need to know that you don't know. For over 20 years, I have been marketing Aging in Place services to clients and educating families and healthcare professionals in how to put aging in place strategies into place. When you utilize aging in place, you are allowed to choose where you want to live and make those decisions so that you can retain your quality of life. Happy New Year, and thank you for joining me for another season of Aging in Place Strategies and Answers. It's that time of year where most people are coming up with New Year resolutions. New Year's resolutions are usually personal and usually have something to do with breaking with the past, last year, and starting something new in the new year. Many times people mention lifestyle changes such as adding exercise, watching what they eat, spending less money, or developing a better work-life balance. Maybe a New Year's resolution could be to spend more time with those they care about. And this is why in January you might notice that your favorite gym or health center has a full parking lot. Or your favorite stores might have emptier parking lots, and the lines are not nearly as long at fast food restaurants. However, by the 1st of February, life seems to have slipped back into former patterns. You notice that it's easier to find a parking spot at the gym, shopping centers are getting busier, and the lines at fast food restaurants are back in their normal pattern. The desire to make change is the great first step, but without a plan or a start date or a goal, it's probably going to be impossible to make the change, and it certainly won't be possible to see if the needle has moved in the direction of your goal. Did you know that a resolution is actually a firm decision? In all honesty, last year, I wrote down 3 goals that I wanted to focus on throughout 2023. I wrote them on the calendar in January, and I continued to write them on the calendar each month as I turned the page. But in all honesty, some of those goals from last year were not met. And it wasn't that I didn't want to make them happen. It was just that all I did was to really write them down on my calendar and to be mindful of them. So, for example, one of my goals was to continue to run 3 miles, but to improve my time. Well, I'm still working on that one. And sometimes I'm not improving my time. And yet, sometimes I do. So it's a win when I'm able to improve my time even a little. I also wrote down that I wanted to swim a mile, but I didn't actually change anything on my schedule that would allow me to go to the gym to swim each week. I also had a weight goal, which I met being mindful of my intake. But I certainly didn't have clear-cut goals and expectations and time frames where I was going to evaluate and change course. So I had some successes and I had some failures. And quite frankly, I am not a huge fan of New Year's resolutions because I really believe in long-term goals. If I'm going to try to break a habit or I'm trying to set a goal for myself, this is a goal that I think that I should make in my life or a change that I need to make in my life so that I can live a better life. Well, what about you? Do you like New Year's? Have you already started thinking about what kind of habit or lifestyle you would like to make, change you would like to make in the new year? Well, this podcast is called New Year, New You, Defy the Aging Process. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So if you've identified a habit or a lifestyle change that you would like to make in the new year, obviously that is part of the first step. And writing it down actually makes it possible to then say, this is what I'm going to do. I have now written this down. Lifestyle changes will take more time, but you must create a short-term goal and then meet it and begin to set the next goal. So, what is your action plan to meet your short-term goal? And another great tip would be to highlight the start date on your calendar and then choose the day of the week, whether it's the first day of the week or the last day of the week, and write down the results on your calendar. You know, it's really quite simple. If you had a win that day, I would just circle or check it off. Make note that that was a good day. You stuck to your goal and you stuck to your plan and you're definitely working towards it. But some days we just don't meet that goal. But rather than scrap the lifestyle changes or scrap the short-term goal that you might have made, it's better to get back up on that pony and start riding again. But evaluating your results 3 weeks or 30 days from the start date should be a helpful thing to do because it will allow you to see that you've actually made some progress and that you're getting closer to the goal. And then if you haven't or you need to make some changes in your game plan, it will give you the impetus to keep going. Some people love accountability partners that you can talk to about your goal. And if you're not making headway or if you've fallen off the horse and need to get back on, they can really encourage you to do that. But if you don't need that or cannot find the right person that will try to keep you accountable, then maybe using the calendar system like I've tried to do in my life could be advantageous for you, especially if you live alone. Keep in mind that habits are hard to break, and they take time. Habits are hard to break because the brain doesn't really distinguish between a good or a bad habit. You and your brain must objectively decide or be aware that a lifestyle change or a habit needs to be unlearned. This is why consistency and repetition is the key to achieving change or achieving the desired goal. So each week you're going to have to evaluate how you are doing. Here's a question that I had that I wanted to learn the answer to. Is 30 days or 4 weeks long enough to change a habit, a pattern, or a behavior? Well, fortunately, the experts from mindpath.com had the answer for me. And they said that it takes at least 30 days, but more like 60 days for us to change a habit, a pattern, or a behavior. In my own personal experience, I find that for me, 6 to 8 weeks is the optimum time for my brain to begin unlearning habits and start new ones. When you think about it, that's not really all that long. I also learned that in that time frame, my brain's desire for that habit changed. And the process of breaking the habit and continuing with that particular lifestyle change was not so hard anymore. It wasn't like it was a stressor or upsetting or make me anxious that I needed to have a different decision. It became the normal decision. Well, here's something else to consider from activeiron.com. The 2190 rule states that it takes 21 days to make a habit and 90 days to make it a permanent lifestyle change. So if you're thinking that 5 to 7 days is good enough, or 7 days to 2 weeks is long enough, that you're simply going to fail. And so because we're thinking about lifestyle changes and we're thinking about defying our age, and we're learning that if we're going to create a new goal and it's going to be a firm resolution, that we need to note these things and give our brains the chance that it needs to actually make these changes. I have found that illustrations are really the easiest way to help us remember what we've learned. So let's say that you are beginning to realize that you are spending too much time on social media. Did you know that for seniors as well as children, the recommended screen time is 30 minutes per day? Now, I chose this illustration specifically because for seniors who spend too much time on social media or time just scrolling through their phone, it can be just as detrimental as it is to children, and for exactly the same reasons. Seniors, like children who spend too much time on social media, can fall prey to scams. They can get too much misinformation. They can fall prey to dating hoaxes and risk becoming socially isolated, anxious, and depressed. So, if you might be spending too much time on social media, maybe that could be your resolution for a lifestyle change. And if you're like most people, we really don't know how much time we spend on social media or scrolling on our phones. So that's always the first step, is to note the time you begin looking at your phone and the time you finish looking at your phone. And depending on the amount of time you usually spend, maybe your first goal would be to start by spending 30 minutes less for the next 2 to 3 weeks, and then chop another 30 minutes off that time for the following 2 to 3 weeks. It might take you 6 to 8 weeks, but by that time, you will have at least reduced your screen time by an hour. I'm kind of a cold turkey kind of gal. So a friend of mine that I knew, they decided they were going to choose my method. And they decided to set the timer for 30 minutes. And after the timer went off, they got up and started doing something else. Over time, and in that sweet spot that we've been talking about, that in that 6 to 8 weeks, that became easier and easier to do, and they found that their time was spent in a more productive way. Well, maybe social media isn't such a big deal to you, but the TV has become your friend, and it's a way that you spend or pass the time. Do you want to reduce how much TV you watch? Research tells us that less than 2 hours per day is recommended. Why? Because people who watch more TV have more difficulty remembering basic things like places and names. Longer TV viewing habits lead to subsequent declines in cognitive functions, including executive function, which is your decision making, and visual and verbal short-term memory. So, if you don't know where to begin, I've just given you 2 ideas on where you can choose to make a New Year's resolution that would help to improve your physical well-being as well as your mental well-being. And if we're going to defy age, those are the very 2 things that we need to focus on, with the addition of a few more, but we don't want to get overwhelmed. Several years ago, I created a goal to reduce the time I spent on Pinterest in my downtime. Now, Pinterest is an app and it's not a bad thing, but it was stealing valuable minutes that I could have been doing something more productive for myself and for my brain. And like I said, I'm more of a cold turkey habit breaker. So when I realized that I was reaching for my phone in my downtime, I had to tell myself to choose something other than Pinterest. And so I added reading, and now I have even added listening to music. Did you know that research shows that music reduces stress, lessens anxiety, eases pain, and improves memory? While the effects of music on people are not fully understood, studies have shown that listening to music releases a chemical called dopamine that can have a positive effect on our health. So not all things are bad. Not all things need to be changed. Your goals are going to be your goals. Mine are going to be mine. But in 2024, if you and I choose to defy our age, those might be some great places to start. When we listen to the experts about defying our age, there's so much information, and quite frankly, I'm not even sure where to begin, and I feel like I have a pretty good handle on defying age by working with seniors the last 20 years. Obviously, some of the goals when we want to defy our age are debility and senility. So who do we turn to when we want to see the kinds of things that we might be wanting to focus on in a new year as we try to defy our age? So I went to Johns Hopkins to see what they might tell us that we need to do. And their answers were pretty simple. You and I know them. The question is, are we putting them into practice if we would like to defy our age? And Johns Hopkins said we are to eat mostly whole foods, which is the perimeter of the grocery store. The first thing they suggested that we do and this is a perfect time to do it, is to open your pantry, toss prepackaged processed foods that tend to make you feel sluggish and heavy. They also tell us that we should be watching the red meat because it is harder to digest and it saps energy, and add fish and other lean proteins to our diet. It's so important to get some sunshine to improve your mood and your energy. But of course, we have to balance that with protecting against skin cancer. But you definitely need vitamin D. And you also need vitamin B12 for red blood cell formation, cell metabolism, nerve function, and the production of DNA. And of course, B12 can be found in poultry, meat, fish, and dairy products. Johns Hopkins also suggested adding movement, whether that's physical exercise, whether that's mowing the grass, gardening, dancing, cleaning house, or going for a walk, or other activities such as golfing, riding your bike, running, any physical activity, swimming, whatever it is that you like. But early in the day is best because early morning sunshine improves your circadian rhythm. It will give you energy throughout the day, and it will also help to regulate your sleep. It is also important, they mentioned, to review all your medications with your doctor every 3 to 6 months. Ask which medications you should continue. Are there any medications that you can take at a lower dose? And I want to say that I'm hoping that these two simple questions with your physicians will go well. But go in and ask the questions at the end of your visit and have a spirit of learning, but ask and don't be shy. I heard a story from a friend last year whose mother kept falling, and each fall, of course, was getting worse. A simple question to the physician about the blood pressure medication, which had been prescribed when the patient weighed more than they currently did, could that be related to the falls? And the physician said the only way we'll know is to discontinue it. And so they did, and guess what? The falls stopped. So questions are good, and getting appropriate responses from your doctors, very important. So this is what I learned from Healthline about how to defy age. And I love this first one very much. It said, do not try to look like a 20-something, but live your best life and have the physical and mental health to enjoy it. Accept your age. Be kind to your skin, of course. Keep it hydrated, protect it from harmful UV rays. Exercise regularly because when you exercise, it lowers your risk for diseases. It improves your mobility. It lowers your stress. It improves your sleep, your skin, and your bone health, plus mood. And you want to know more? Exercise has no side effects. How much exercise does Healthline recommend? 2.5 to 5 hours per week. Walking, swimming, dancing, cycling, balance training, plus aerobic and muscle strengthening. It's so important for you to do something you like. And of course, if you are starting a regimen, you can always check in with your doctor and see if there's any limitations. And then they will mark your chart that you are starting to exercise. It was interesting. I was reading other articles, and doctors are starting to prescribe exercise more because there are fewer side effects and the benefits are so big. Healthline also recommends that we mind our diet, just like the Johns Hopkins list gave us if we were going to defy our age. It recommended fruits and vegetables, lean proteins, whole grain cereals, breads, pastas, and rice. Of course, you need calcium-rich foods for bone health and healthy fats like olive oil and avocado oil. They also recommended that we watch our mental health. And if you're taking medications that have been prescribed by your doctor for your diagnosis, continue to take those, but also to report any changes in mood, your interests, anxiety, etc. Some medications might need to be adjusted or replaced with newer ones. I have mentioned and talked about socialization before, and I can't emphasize this enough for every one of us that are going to try to defy age. And I will also say that this is the hardest thing for all of us to do at any age, even for those who are confirmed extroverts. So what are we going to do? How are we going to socialize? How are we going to engage beyond the walls of our home or beyond the walls of beyond our family? Well, it might start with you making a list of your interests. Maybe you love art. Maybe you love to paint. Maybe you love to tour the art museum. Maybe music is your thing. Maybe attending lectures, reading, dancing, card games. Perhaps you have a pet that you like to walk. I know that one of the neighborhoods that I walk in always posts a pet owner meetup group. And I think, how fun is that? You take your pet and get to be with other people. Write down the items that bring you joy, but you might also want to include something that might help others. You might want to figure out a way that you can volunteer, because it is when we help others that we find purpose. And purpose is a way that we stay involved in the world and begin to be a part of it and stay a part of it. Recently on our news, there was a story about a veteran, and he loved to go into the neonatal unit and rock the babies and hold them at times when their parents could not be there, because he knows how important touch is to babies. So volunteering is really great, and there's lots of ways, and there's lots of organizations that need people. I recently participated in the Jingle Bell Run for the Arthritis Foundation, and when I asked about volunteers, they said, that's funny that you would ask, because the volunteers did not come back after COVID. And so many organizations need volunteers to fill out roles within their organizations. So maybe I'm talking to you. But yet again, maybe we should just have this conversation while we're trying to defy age. Do you like to work? Do you miss working? Do you wish you didn't retire? Or are you contemplating retiring, but you kind of like your job and you're wondering why you have to retire? So maybe you need to rethink what your retirement specifically should look like, and certainly consider going back to work or continuing to work. Nobody said you had to retire at 65. You can always work. Well, we're all different, and we all get to choose how we want our next chapter to look like. So, are you going to accept debility as you age, or are you going to defy your age with agility and purpose? Well, at the start of this new year, take the age-defying tips I listed and choose to incorporate one this year, starting now. Use my tips on resolution, goals, planning, and evaluation to give you the jump start you might need. I work in healthcare. You know that. I've told you that. And I've witnessed how lifestyle affects health. So I'm very comfortable sharing practical advice and wisdom that will help you live your best life and defy your age. The last time I was at the gym, a gentleman was waiting at the front door for his wife. He had worked out, and I assumed that she had finished her workout and was coming up to meet him. And we just started chatting. You know how that goes. Well, he mentioned to me that even though he had started a new routine of coming to the gym, he had so much to overcome. He said he let his health decline, but he really was trying to start a new pattern and hoped he could stay on it. I told him, don't be too hard on yourself. I said, most people will tell you they hate to exercise, but truly, all of us will wake up one day and say, youth is no longer on our side. He nodded his head, looked at me, and said, you got that right, lady. Well, I wasn't lying to him either. I used to give talks at an acute therapy center, and I usually asked 2 questions to get the participants' attention. The first question I asked was, raise your hand if you like to exercise. Well, I know people don't like to exercise, so I really only expected 1 to 2 hands at the most. Sometimes I got none, sometimes I got 1. The second question that I asked was, How many of you feel that the therapy you have received at this clinic has helped you to regain strength, to learn how to do new things, and has given you a new start to improve your health? Well, everybody raised their hand when I asked that question. By asking those questions, I was just trying to get them to see the direct correlation between therapy exercises and restored or improved health. Unfortunately, there's just no other way to say this, but if you don't move it, you're going to lose it. Physical activity stimulates the production of synovial fluid, reducing joint pain and stiffness. Aerobic exercise that gets the heart pumping, pushes blood, and increases circulation through our brain so that it will help us with our mental functioning. So if you fear dementia, exercise is where it's at. Now, we're all different, and like I said, we all get to choose how we want to live our next chapter. So here's wishing a wonderful 2024 to you, and that you, like me, are going to learn how to defy your age and get started on some new lifestyle goals and habits. Thank you for joining me, of course, and being with me. But you know, my listeners, that I always end each podcast with a caregiver tip. And the caregiver tip I want to leave you with today is about creating bandwidth. I heard a great broadcast one day that said in order to be effective at what you are doing and feel like you're in control, you need to create bandwidth. So caregivers, look at your 2024 calendar and your commitments. Make the first commitment to yourself so you can be a caregiver to someone else. If you need to continue working and caring for somebody, use tips from this podcast and problem solve so that you can do things for yourself and for others. Caregivers, look at your social connections. If you need to pause some of them in order to provide care for someone else, decide which one to pause, but stay connected socially. Is there a procedure or a test that you need to have? Or perhaps there's a medical concern that you have. It's time to make the phone call, ask questions, find out about the procedure, the test, and then figure out the best time to schedule it. And then it's time to call in the troops. And in this podcast, I've given you not this particular one, but in previous podcasts, I've given you tips on who to call and how to find out that information. But by creating bandwidth, you create a healthy balance, which will help you succeed at your caregiving role. Thank you all for spending time with me, and just wait until next week when we are going to learn more about defying age. Thank you for joining me today. Please remember that this podcast is intended as guidance and not advice. Share this podcast with friends and family who are currently in crisis mode or with people who would like to start developing their own roadmap for aging in place. Listeners, if you would like a deeper dive into a topic discussed during a podcast, please subscribe to Aging in Place Strategies and Answers, where you will be able to access premium content. Or if you would like to suggest a topic for this podcast, please contact me at linda.agingstrategies@gmail.com. As always, I value the time you spend with me.